Mounds of plastic waste in his hometown prompted one Zimbabwean man to build a shredder that helps turn the trash into useful items.
India's digital footprint has tripled in less than a decade. 60% of Indians now have access to the internet.
More than 1 million Somalis have been displaced by the worst drought in 40 years.
Good afternoon, our dear viewers. You're tuned into the 1 p.m. news live and direct on Golfe TV Africa. I am Hazel OGOIGBE.
And I'm Metohuey ADOGLO. How are you doing, Hazel?
Very fine, thank you. Beautiful afternoon to you, Metohuey.
Thank you.
All right, now starting with the news on the African scene. In Niger, 817,000 schools. In Niger, 817 schools with a total of over 72,000 students, including 34,464 girls, have closed. This is mainly in the Tillabéri region, the so-called three-border area between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, according to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. Now, some 17,000 students have already been able to return to the educational system, and soon more than 55,300 others will go to about 20 of these dedicated centers in several towns in the southwestern, hosting displaced people, according to the Nigerian government.
UNICEF stamped school bags on their backs walk down small and sand dunes to study on the outskirts of Ulam, a town southwestern Niger that has been plagued by jihadist violence for 5 years. But these children are not like other students and carry with them memories of the horrors they witnessed at the hands of the jihadists. They come from 18 villages close to Mali, whose inhabitants found refuge in Ulam at the end of 2021, fleeing the killings by jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State that led to the closure of schools. In Niger, 817 schools with a total of 72,421 students, including 34,464 girls, have closed, mainly in the Tillabéri region, the so-called three borders areas between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, according to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF.
Plus de 90 écoles fermées.
I have more than 90 schools closed, so this situation has prompted the regional management to rethink of a response. This roadmap created the cluster centers in the Tillabéri region, including 3 cluster centers in Walam.
Some 17,000 students have already been able to return to the education system, and soon more than 55,300 others will go about 20 of those dedicated centers in several towns in the southwest, hosting displaced people, according to the Nigerian government. In Ulam, nearly 1,600 school children, some of whom had dropped out 3 years ago, are enrolled in 3 centers built near a site for displaced people. The euphoria of a return to school has not, however, erased the memories of the horrors that some of the children witnessed.
They have been traumatized by the event they have lived through because some of them have seen their parents killed, shot in front of them, and this has matched them. So these children cannot be left like that. They have to be taken care of to bring them to a normal life through exercises.
Nasir Malik, Hassan, Abdu, and their parents walked for miles on foot to flee at Dabab, a village in the commune of Bandin Bangul, which has been targeted several times by jihadist attacks, the last of which cost lives of 11 civilians on the 22nd of October. When they arrived, many of the children showed signs of distress and trauma. Some were isolating themselves, others were very aggressive, said Muru Chabu, head of education. Some recounted in great detail how their parents were shot in front of them. He sighed.
The situation for schools is very worrying and is even becoming dramatic. There are more than 890 schools that have been closed here in Niger. As an alternative, many children have been grouped together in school centers where it is much more difficult to give them access to quality education. In Walam, nearly 1,600 children are enrolled in school.
However, minor cases of absenteeism worry the managers of Ulam centers, which have free canteens. Some children skip school to go to work in town and feed their families, says Adamu Dari. Very poor families tend to take their children to work or to start early marriages of young girls. Applause from his French Secretary of State, Harlan Desi, Vice President of Europe of the NGO International Rescue Committee, who recently visited the site of the displaced people of Ulam. Maruchabu warns, if these children are left behind, they risk being recruited by armed groups. In 2021, Amnesty International warned of the recruitment of young boys aged 15 and 17, mainly by the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group the Soutien al-Islam et aux Musulmans, particularly in Tohodi area near Burkina Faso, in agreement with their parents.
More than 1 million Somalis have been displaced by the worst drought in 40 years. The situation in Somalia is becoming more critical as the days go by.
The UN's World Food Programme says Somalia's worst drought in nearly half a century has wiped out millions of livestock and made nearly 80 million people, including 1.5 million children, face hunger. The unprecedented failure of a fifth rainy season in a row has displaced more than 1 million Somalis from the countryside to the outskirts of cities like Baidawa. Many have no option but to walk, and the most vulnerable don't always survive.
Our journey took us 10 days, during which 3 of my children died of hunger. We have not received any aid for the 3 months we have been here. Our only source of income is the firewood we cut and sell. If we don't sell any, we are unable to eat and sometimes go hungry all night.
Children under the age of 5, the most vulnerable to malnutrition, receive what care is available at Baidawa Hospital.
We have experienced a severe drought, during which we have not been able to grow our crops for 4 consecutive seasons due to lack of rain. Our livestock has been wiped out, and my son is suffering from malnutrition.
Hospital admissions for children are rising quickly.
Malnourished children are at an alarmingly high rate. We were admitting about 150 to 200 children per month. Now the number of children per month has reached 300 to 400.
Somalia's southwest state government is working closely with aid agencies to lessen the impact of the drought and try to prevent famine. State Minister of Humanitarian and Disaster Management, Abdi Nasser Abdi Aroush, is coordinating relief efforts.
Our goal is to ensure that no famine occurs in this country, and we expect God to help in our efforts to ensure that it does not happen. It is important that we do all that is possible to prevent people from dying of hunger. As a government, we have been entrusted with the responsibility by our people.
But in the makeshift camps for displaced, there are few visible signs of adequate aid for drought victims. The last famine in Somalia in 2011 killed 250,000 people. If more food aid doesn't arrive soon, aid groups say another famine in Somalia could be even worse.
In half-hour address broadcasted on Sunday, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo addressed the nation to explain the raft of measures his government will be taking to see its way out of financial turmoil, including measures to support domestic production.
In a half-hour address broadcasted on Sunday, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo addressed the nation to explain the raft of measures his government will be taking to see its way out of financial turmoil, including measures to support domestic production.
Are in a crisis. Do not exaggerate when I say so. I cannot find an example in history when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time. But, as we have shown in other circumstances, we should turn this crisis into an opportunity to resolve not just the short-term urgent problem, but the long-term structural problems that continue to bedevil our economy, to repair in the short term our public finances and restore our balance of payments, whilst we continue to work on the medium to long-term structural changes that are at the heart of our goal of constructing a resilient, robust Ghanaian economy and building a Ghana beyond aid.
Among these measures, Nana Akufo-Addo announced a 30% cut in budgeted discretionary expenditures and salaries of the president, the vice president, ministers, deputy ministers, and political office holders. The rise of the COVID-19 pandemic ushered in an era of disillusionment. Growth slowed, and money borrowed in the markets became increasingly high in price.
Prices and import duty have risen due to the cedi depreciation and dollar appreciation. So importers find it difficult to import items due to the hikes in duty, and customers no longer come in. The Ghana Union of Traders Association said the move sent a signal to the government that they were frustrated over poor economic management.
The plea of these businesses, though private sector is also one of the backbones of the economy, we employ most of the young people in the system. Okay, if I'm able to employ one or two guys in my shop, at the end of the day, I've taken some people off the street. So government should do implement policies that will also cushion us, so for our businesses to grow, whilst looking at other alternatives to also grow the economy.
These difficulties were exacerbated by the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict on food and energy prices worldwide. Inflation in Ghana is rising to over 37%, while the Ghana cedi currency is depreciating at an unforeseen pace since the beginning of the year. The cedi has lost over 40% against the dollar. Most importantly, debt, the Achilles heels of the Ghanaian economy, has soared. It now accounts for nearly 80% of Ghana's gross domestic product. This is an insurmountable burden that has compelled the Accra government to break with its 3-year strike from demanding aid from the International Monetary Fund. This is the 17th request to the International Monetary Fund for a new aid plan since the country's independence in 1957. It had pilled to swallow for the African giant Ghana. Still on the African scene, crossing over to Zimbabwe, mounds of plastic waste in his hometown prompted one Zimbabwean man to build a shredder that helps turn trash into useful items. Now he plans to move the project to the capital Harare, where authorities have been struggling to deal with plastic waste dumped on the streets.
Troubled by the plastic waste in the streets of his city, Bulawayo, Qinisani Kalindlovu quit his lucrative construction business and is now using his backyard to recycle plastic into items used by school children.
In 5 years' time, Mumtawa Recycling will probably be producing sports equipment, recycled for educational purposes. You're mentioning your kids' counters, you're mentioning your book holders, and we're looking at sitting areas for school children, particularly outdoors.
He collects plastics from his neighborhood and from schools near his home in Bulawayo.
This program is so helpful because it keeps the school clean. Yes, and also the school children, you know, since they always throw the booklets around, so by collecting these booklets, it clears all the dirt and the pollution also by the school.
For years now, authorities in Zimbabwe have struggled to dispose of plastic. Nkanison Ndlovu, the cleansing superintendent of the city of Bulawayo, says his council is putting in place policies to encourage private companies and volunteers to go into the recycling business.
Plastic waste is one of the waste that is giving us serious problems as the city of Bulawayo. because everywhere where you go, you will meet plastic waste. In the streets of the CPD, in the residential areas, all over the place there is plastic waste. So it is indeed a serious problem in the city of Bulawayo.
The same is true for Zimbabwe's capital city of Harare, where Qinisani Kali Ndlovu hopes to move and establish recycling there to fight plastic waste.
The Independent National Electoral Commission in Nigeria has rejected calls for the reordering of the sequence of the 2023 general elections. Now, the National Commissioner and the Chairman of Information and Voters Education Committee, INEC Festus Okoye, made this known in an interview. A civil society group, Conference of Civil Society of Nigeria, had on Saturday called on the Commission to reorder the election sequence. The Independent National Electoral Commission Nigeria has rejected calls for the reordering of the sequence of the 2023 general elections. The National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, made this known in an interview with newsmen. A civil society group, Conference of Civil Society of Nigeria, had on Saturday called on the Commission to reorder the election sequence. The group said the 2023 poll should start with the governorship elections and other presidential elections as contained in INEC's timetable, noting that the reordering of the election sequence is necessary to avoid any disruptions that might arise from the conduct of the presidential polls. Responding, Okoye said the Independent National Electoral Commission does not and will not on any account share its constitutional and legal powers with any individual, group or organization. It is the sole responsibility and prerogative of the Commission to organize, undertake and supervise all elections to the office of the President and the Vice President, the governors and deputy governors of the state, and the membership of the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the House of Assembly of each state of the Nigerian Federation. By the provisions of Section 132, subsection 1, and Section 178, subsection 1 of the Constitution, an election to the office of the President or Governor shall be held on a day to be appointed by the Independent National Electoral Commission in accordance with the Electoral Act. On the 26th of February 2022, INEC, in compliance with Section 28 of the Nigerian Constitution, gave the statutory notice stating the dates of the 2023 general elections and the place at which nomination papers are to be delivered. It is therefore too late in the day to suggest an adjustment on tinkering with the sequence of election.
India's digital footprint has tripled in less than a decade. 60% of Indians now have access to internet. This digital expansion has changed the lives of millions of people across the country. We'll take a closer look at how that growth clashes with the government's attempts to regulate the internet.
The Singhs in Delhi are one of India's most followed social media influencer families.
So guys are finally
they are among the new influencers who have become an internet sensation overnight because of India's digital revolution. Every week, this family produces dozens of videos on YouTube and Instagram, ranging from short films to dance videos. Ramneek Singh, the head of the family, says for them, content is everything.
Earlier, without internet, without this reach, there were no opportunities for people like us who are social media influencers. We are earning a lot of money as well, There's a huge economic impact on our lives. And all this again is happening. Why? Because of the internet.
India's digital footprint has tripled in less than a decade. 60% of Indians now have access to the internet. This expansion has changed the lives of millions of people across the country.
To expand its digital footprints, the Indian government launched the Digital India program in 2015. The main aim of this ambitious program is to connect more people online from the remote areas and to transform the country into a digitally empowered society.
In the bustling markets of Delhi, one of the most visible changes is the transition to digital payments. From tea stall owners to big businesses, digital payments have become their new mode of transaction. Deepak Kumar has been running this tea stall for several years. In recent months, he has noticed a clear shift among customers who prefer digital payments over cash.
The majority of customers I get these days want to pay online. No one carries cash. Digital payments also make it quick and easy for us.
But this massive expansion of India's digital space comes with its own setbacks. The country has the highest number of internet shutdowns imposed by state and central governments. Last year, the internet service was cut in India 106 times. And so far this year, 93 shutdowns have taken place. There are also other impediments like disinformation and growing censorship, which critics say are rampant since the Hindu nationalist government came to power in 2014. For the Internet Freedom Foundation, an organization that defends online freedom, the situation in India is a cause of concern.
I think India's rising instances of internet shutdowns fits into a larger trend towards eroding democratic ideals. Online censorship in particular in India is a highly opaque process. If your speech or your website or your YouTube video gets taken down by the government, you are never told why this happened. As a result, you never have an opportunity to contest this.
With a powerful blend of government initiatives to improve and expand connectivity, India's digital revolution is gathering pace. However, it comes with the fear of increasing censorship and a slide towards digital authoritarianism.
Nelly Shibui, a Kenyan woman whose experience inspired her to start a program that teaches kids vital IT skills using old computers donated by companies and big institutions. After founding Tech Lead Africa, she targeted remote areas where people rarely have access to computers or electronics, arguing that through the initiative there is no need for children to travel long distances to get education.
Tanzania's population jumped by more than 37% in a decade to reach 61.7 million. President Samia Suluhu Hassan said Monday, as she unveiled the results of the national census. The East African country's population grew from 44.9 million in 2021 to more than 60 million, according to the census carried out earlier this year, with Hassan saying the numbers reflected an annual increase of 3.2%. With a larger population, more efficiency is needed to match with the current challenges and the current numbers, the president said. Consequently, she has urged her people to start preparing development projects. So far, 2 African cities are home to more than 10 million residents, namely Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Lagos in Nigeria. Tanzania's economic hub Dar es Salaam is set to become a mega city by 2050. That same year, the population is projected to reach 151.2 million people.
Still on the African scene, crossing over to Kenya, Nelly Chibwes is a Kenyan woman whose experience has inspired her to start a program that teaches kids vital IT skills using old computers donated by companies and big institutions. More information in the following report.
Students at the Zawadi Yetu Academy in Mogitio, Baringo County in East Kenya are the IT specialists of the future. That's thanks to a project that uses digital skills to unlock global opportunities in remote parts of the country. Founder Nelly Chibwes grew up in the Mogito village and had never touched a laptop until she won a scholarship to study in the United States. When faced with a computer, she had no IT skills and did not even know how to type. Her experiences made her think of school children in her village and inspired her to start a program that teaches kids vital IT skills. She also founded Tech Lead Africa. It uses old computers donated by companies and big institutions. Chibwes offers the computers for free, but local students have the responsibility of paying teachers, which costs parents $1 per day in addition to the 4,500 Kenyan shillings per term at the Zawadi Yetu Academy. Other schools have different.
We collect computer donations from companies and institutions. We import them into Kenya. We have a refurbishment center here where we wipe the computers, install our own custom operating system, and then we deploy into schools. We also partner with youth in the community that we train to run our classes. So our classes are part of the school curriculum.
Sami Ruto, a student of Zawadi Yetu Academy, says he wants to work in IT when he grows up, and the skills he's learning here will help him do that.
In this class, I've been taught how to use Visual Studio Code to make my own website using HTML and CSS. Then I've been taught about OpenShot and about NASA to make my own rocket when I grow up. So I hope this class will help me in my future to be an IT expert.
Elise Duzebemia is an IT teacher at the school. He believes that lessons will ensure that the pupils can compete in a digital world.
I've been teaching kids how to develop websites and how they can add some goodies on their website like CSS, images, videos, and audios. This is something that will help kids know how they can brand themselves online and how they can do business online, because that's where the world is heading.
Because we're living in a world where we're now going to digital currency. Things like bitcoins, cryptocurrency, fintech, basically financial technology. Should these kids begin these particular skills at this age, I'm sure by the time they're actually out of university, they will be implementing these skills and not looking for jobs like most of us.
Tech Leads is targeting remote areas where people rarely have access to computers or electronics, arguing that there's no need for children to travel long distances to get education. The program is currently running in 13 schools across Kenya, equipping 5,000 students from the ages of 4 to 12 with skills to unlock their future.
The Rwandan authorities have set open Ebola prevention booth at the Gatuna border crossing with Uganda. Anyone who crosses the border is invited to have their temperature taken, and if they have symptoms, they are placed in quarantine room before being transported to an hospital.
The Rwandan authorities have set up an Ebola prevention booth at the Gatuna border crossing with Uganda. Anyone who crosses the border is invited to have their temperature taken, and if they have symptoms, they are placed in a quarantine room before being transported to a hospital. At least 60 people showed potential symptoms of Ebola, such as fever, but after testing and being quarantined, no one has tested positive for the disease. John Gilbert, a Kenyan citizen crossing the border, said he had very little information about Ebola because where he came from, people are not scared of Ebola. In his country, they hear that it exists in some parts of Uganda, but not at the Bwazia border. So when he was passing through the border, he was comfortable since he did some outskirt part of Uganda, not even passing through. Another Kenyan crossing the border added, the epicenter in rural communities in central Uganda, about 150 kilometers from the capital, Kampala. Rwandan authorities have set up an Ebola prevention booth at the Gatuna border crossing with Uganda. On the global scene, United Nations rights experts decried on Monday the lack of accountability for the stark dehumanization of African migrants after many were killed trying to cross from Morocco to Spain in June. Now, the migrants, the experts warned, were being pushed back irrespective of their rights under international refugee or international human rights law.
United Nations experts decried Monday the lack of accountability for the stark dehumanization of African migrants after many were killed trying to cross from Morocco to Spain in June. The incident on June 24th, when around 3,000 mostly Sudanese nationals tried to enter the Spanish enclave, marks one of the deadliest attempted crossing in 9 years. The United Nations Rights Office said at the time that at least 23 people had died. But in Monday's statement, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia, and the working group of experts on people of African descent put the toll at least 37. The experts said they condemned the continuing lack of accountability for the stark dehumanization of African migrants at the perimeter of Europe. These experts' words were being pushed back, irrespective of their rights under the international refugee or international human rights law. The experts said they had sent communications to the Spanish and Moroccan governments in July, expressing concern about the violence and had received replies. But they said they had yet to see signs of concrete accountability. The experts pointed a finger at Europe as a whole.
Now for more information on stories across the continent, we head into the African newspaper review, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the 1 p.m. English News. Hazel.
Metohuey.
Now it's time for the African newspaper review.
I'm excited.
All right, we start off the paper from stories coming in from local territory, the Matin Libre. The front page of the Matin Libre talks about the promo that is called the hand of hot, the hot hand, I guess it says. Now it says MTN returns and it's given the winner from Gahu of car, a Suzuki Vitara vehicle after he won that particular promo. You can find out more about that on page 5 of the Matin Libre. Now looking at the lower part of the paper, it talks about 53 associations of arts works coming together in Parakou. Now we did talk about how artisans are coming together and to try and make it better for them as a lot. Making up a union, it's better to be in a union. You know, you cannot do anything by yourself. A union helps you achieve more for the collective. Now moving on from that, we head to the next paper of the day. 5 years present in the Republic of Benin. We have that of page 8 as the Hotel Golden Tulip is celebrating her anniversary. Happy birthday to her. She celebrates her 5th year presence in the Republic of Benin. Moving on from that, we head to the next paper of the edition as we touch on the potential, le potentiel. The front page of the potential reveals how caskets, cars, helmets are an obligation for passengers on bikes. We have that on page 3. Also looking down at the lower part of the paper, it talks about the ritual ceremony to pay homage to the king of Aja. We have that on page 2. And this is going to happen on the 26th of November this month. Also talking about the menace of terrorism in the Republic of Benin. We have it on page 8, and also the accusation of theft in the secretariat. We have that on page 2 of Le Potentiel. Moving on from that, we head now to easier waters as we touch on the nation Nigeria. The front page of the nation Nigeria reveals our unbundled transmission to provide power. Says Tinubu, restates commitment to double-digit GDP, promises consumers credit revolution, renewed anti-terror on war. Now, Hazel, it's been a while we've done this.
Yeah,
it's been over a week.
Yeah.
Tinubu is campaigning, and he's come out to say, I will unbundle transmission to provide power. Unbundling transmission to provide power.
It's, as they always say, it's easier said than done. We don't just want you to come out to just make elephant promises or just promise us elephant projects. We want to know the breakdown and the way you are going to implement your said thoughts and ideologies. Because anybody could come out and say this, but can we have the breakdown? Can we have the technicalities? Since Nigeria's gained independence since 1960 till now, the situation has just gone from bad to worse, from worse to worst. So right now, with the difficult situation in Nigeria in the power sector, and Tinubu coming to tell us that he's going to unbundle power, making sure that Nigeria has more electricity. How does he mean to achieve this? That is the question every single Nigerian is asking.
So basically, you are saying he's just giving sound bites.
No, if he's giving sound bites, it's allowed. But then give us the technicalities. Do you want to partner with a country that brings electricity? Do you want to open dams? Do you want? How exactly do you intend to achieve this?
All right, I agree with you as usual. Now, also, passengers stranded as union pickets MAA2, we had it on page 11. Investors lose 2.8 trillion as sell-off worsens in Nigeria. We have that on page 12. Also, police probe Davido's domestic workers over the death of his son. Now, we should know that popular Afrobeat Nigerian singer Davido lost his 3-year-old son yesterday. Very tragic incident as his son drowned in a swimming pool. That was a very touching story, very disappointing. You know, we should remember this also happened to Debanj as well. His son also drowned in the swimming pool. I guess it's something that happens. It's probably something that's recurrent with wealthy people that have pools at their homes.
Yeah, but then, in as much as it's something that is recurrent with people that have pools, there were like domestic staffs at home. Do you understand? Like, there's a mixed reaction on social media. You have a lot of people coming to say, why would you leave your 3-year-old child? You know, giving them tips about parenting. Personally, I basically feel that anyone could have an important appointment that you had to leave. That is why you have maids, you have nannies at home. Now, it is the responsibility of the nanny to take care of the child, to make sure the child does not wander out of your sight.
It's literally what she's paid for.
Exactly. You know, talking about that, somebody posted on his status and he was talking about the fact that the elder sister of his baby was in the parlor. She just left for a minute and then he was in the room, and only for him to come and just a minute interval, and then his little baby had started eating soup.
Oh yeah.
Do you understand? Yeah, and he was just saying that many people would, if something had happened to the baby, you would have just started blaming him. But at the end of the day, babies are very sensitive. That's why it's very important to always keep your eyes on them. So the staffs, the domestic staff, should really, really be questioned, because I don't understand.
And you know this, there
was the cook, there was the nanny, there was the gatesman. What were they all doing?
Exactly. And you know the way babies are very fast. In a second,
they've zapped away.
And this is why you are paid for. You are paid to do this job, and you know that this is your livelihood.
It's your livelihood.
It's very disappointing, and I'm just feel very. Our heart goes out to
the family of Davido and Chioma.
Exactly. Moving on from that, we head to the Punch Nigeria. The Front Punch Nigeria also still talking about the video. Autopsy likely as police finally free 6 workers and detain 2. And also, why am I better than Atiku? Obi's economy on Tinubu. We have that on page 27. You can find out more about that. Also, dollar crisis. EFCC plans massive raid on forex dealers. We have that on page 2. Naira's free fall worsens.
In fact, it's
now at 857.
To the dollar.
To the dollar.
It's I think this is not just Nigeria, because Ghana cedi, presently they are saying in the history of Ghana, the Ghana cedi has never ever fallen this low. And there's, Nana Akufo-Addo is asking the International Monetary Fund to give them a bailout again, plunging Ghana deeper into the shackles of debt. Now, you have Nigeria's currency falling on a regular basis, and when the Nigerian currency falls in Nigeria, it has a ripple effect on other countries. Now, presently, I was speaking to one of my baby sisters in one of the private universities in Benin, and she said as of Monday or Tuesday, 1,000 naira was equivalent to 910 sefa or 890 sefa. When I came in, 1,000 naira was equivalent to 3,000 plus. As our last year or 2 years ago, 1,000 naira was equivalent to 1,600. Now the sefa is more powerful than the naira. I never thought I'll be able to live to see a day like this.
The mind-blowing part is that the sefa did not even move.
The sefa is just at equilibrium. Like, it's not moving. It's just static. And the naira just keeps falling. It's horrible, honestly.
All right, disappointing times right now. And this is when Buhari has come out to say that he has achieved what he set out to achieve in Nigeria.
We really want to know what you want, what you set out to achieve, and how well you achieved it. It's a curious question.
All right, commuters lament what Lagos drivers Commuters lament and want Lagos drivers back. We have it on page 5. Drugs wanted Lagos hotelier 6 houses, 217 million seized. We have it on page 4. And also campaign Kwankwanso to recruit 1.5 million soldiers and policemen on page 14.
Okay, that is serious. He shall tell us what he wants to use all the soldiers for. Maybe to make sure they don't rig the elections.
On page 14, he shall tell us.
Okay.
All right, moving on from that, we head now to the Daily Guide of Ghana. The front page of the Daily Guide from Ghana reveals court threatens to free Aisha Huing accomplices. We did remember we talked about the Chinese, the Asians who were got in the Galamsey scam, and then now the court has threatened to release her. Of course, China is a very, very powerful country, and I'm sure this has to do a lot with foreign policies and foreign relationships with China. Also, Akufo-Addo testifies against 4. We have that on page 3, and that's all we have for you on the Daily Guide of Ghana. Not a lot of stories to share on the front page. Moving on from that, we head now to the New Vision Uganda. The front page of the New Vision Uganda reveals move to enable teachers acquire university degrees. Okay, we have it on page 7. I have a question. My question is, move to enable teachers acquire university degrees. So now teachers, now I'm guessing now this has to be teachers in primary and secondary education.
No, for teachers, there are various levels of learning. You have teachers training institutes, you have polytechnics, and then you have universities.
I assume all teachers had degrees. Like it takes a degree.
Well, it depends. When you're talking about degree in some African countries like Nigeria, when you're talking about a degree, you simply mean somebody that graduated from a university.
Exactly.
But there are teachers training colleges.
Okay.
Then you have polytechnics.
Okay.
And then you have training institutes.
Okay.
So it could simply mean, so for someone to be a teacher, the person might have passed through various training institutes, but doesn't have the certificate. Doesn't mean the person is not educated. It just simply means the person went to a teacher's training college and did not go to a university.
Okay, I see. Yeah. I see. All right. Very good there. Museveni rejects health parliament pension bills. Why? You can get it on page 6. King Gongongo endorses Museveni for 2026.
I don't understand.
Museveni has been ruling the country for how long now? I think this is his 6th term.
I don't understand.
And it's since 2026. I think it still takes another 3 years or 4 years, and he's already been endorsed for a 7th mandate. This is incredible.
Incredible.
Moving on from that, we head now to the Star Kenya. It says ACC probes 18 billion shillings Ururu era energy deal. Why? We can get that. Report concludes to Corona wind farm mismanaging taxpayers paid for blunders. We had it on page 4 and 5. Also, hunger forces husband out of homes as girls trade in sex. We had it on page 23. Dida, 65 jumbo matriarch of Tazaville Park, dies of old age.
Please, I want to ask a question. What's the relationship between hunger and then forcing and the men leaving their homes to trade?
Okay, so it says here, desperation. Hunger forces husband out of homes as girls trade in sex. We can zoom that in a little bit more to get a little bit more detail.
Because I'm trying to juxtapose the 2 stories together.
Yeah, truly though. Now, the education department in Kajigdo South sub-county says 400 pupils are out of school due to drought. But parents say most children are home, with Loitoko in the sub-county is the bedrock of the agricultural activities in all. You know what? I think this paper have a little bit of an issue. That has nothing to do with
the full story.
Honestly, very disappointing from the staff from Kenya, and you have highlighted that. You've highlighted your All right. Also, overall consumer inflation rate. Looking at the inflation rate in Kenya, and we can see that just there on that graph that just keeps pitching high. That is the inflation rate that is Kenyans are currently experiencing. I did meet a couple of Kenyans, and I feel it's good to talk about this just a little bit. And they talked about how, people complain about the Ghana cedis, complain about the naira. They say the same thing is happening in Kenya.
The shillings.
That the shillings is also...
So it's universal.
So it's in Africa.
It's in Africa. Not just Africa, even in Britain they're complaining.
Yeah,
that the pound that used to be a stabilizer is also falling.
So it begs the question. We talk about France. And why France is this, France is that, and why, but somehow the French currency, that is the franc CFA, has been stable.
That's a good
question. So it's why.
It begs the question.
I think we need an economist to come help
Explain.
Why the French franc CFA
is just
stable and every other currency is having issues.
Diving.
Exactly. All right, moving on from that, we head now to sports. The Punch Sports Extra, you can bring that up, reveals the ones for the future. Here's all right back. Now, looking at the front page, it talks about the road to Qatar 2022. It's just in 18 days. Pogba out of the World Cup. Lukaku suffers fresh injury ahead of the World Cup. So yeah, magical moments in Yama's rearranging of the versus Argentina in 2010. Look, we're looking at that. Also, Lookman blessed with technique. We have that on page 8. Neville teams United for top 4 finish. We have that on page 6. Lewandowski out of the SNES script. We have that on page 3. Blues keen to sign Trossard in January. We have that on page 4. On the right-hand side of the paper, it says battle for leaders against bottom side. Marcel versus Tottenham. We had it on page 3. Fans to United pay whatever to take for Osimhen. Osimhen is a Nigerian international that's playing very, very good football of late. And now the top English sides want him to play for them. That is Chelsea, Manchester United, and Liverpool. Pay whatever you want for Osimhen and get him to the club. He's playing fine football right now, and they've put a price tag of £80 million on Osimhen. That much for a Nigerian player. Imagine having a player, 80 millionaire for a Nigerian player. He'll be the highest ranked or highest worth player in Nigeria's history. £80 million for Nigeria. Now, Ten Hag hits at the guest contract talks. We have on page 5. And the ones for the future, we have the Falconets, and as they continue their rise on the stage as they play third place India in 2022. Versus the Flamingos. Now, that's all we have for you for this edition of the African Newspaper Review. I'm Metohuey ADOGLO with Hazel.
OGOIGBE, thank you so much.
Back to you.
All right, now, dear viewers, this is where we conclude today's news edition. But before we go, here is a recap of our top stories. We saw the mounds of plastic waste in his hometown prompted one Zimbabwean man to build a shredder that helps turn trash into useful items.
India's digital footprint has tripled in less than a decade. 60% of Indians now have access to internet.
We also saw that more than 1 million Somalians have been displaced by worst drought in 40 years. And our dear viewers, this is where we conclude today's news edition, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa here in the city of Cotonou. Now, I am Hazel OGOIGBE.
And I'm Metohuey ADOGLO. Do have yourself a lovely day.